All right. So how many know that song? I am the church, you are the church. I am the church, you are the church. We are the church together. All who follow Jesus all around the world. Yes, oh, come on, you're anemic today. Come on. I thought we knew it. Let's try one more time, okay? I am the church. You are the church. We are the church together. All who follow Jesus all around the world. Yes, we're the church together. Right, very good. All right, so a little audience participation this morning. What is something that you think people care too much about? Money. All right, thank you. Power. Okay, thank you. You got to speak up, deaf one here. Material things, thank you. Ooh, wait a second, what now? Being right. Woo, yeah, mercy. Okay, all right. What other people think of you. Oh, yeah, now you're meddling. Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah. That's the old saying, right? Left preaching and gone to meddling. Yeah. All right, anyone else? Yeah, all sorts of things. Okay. Question number 2. What do you think people care too little about? I'm sorry, what? Each other. Okay. Our planet. Oh, amen to that. Yes. Boy, oh boy. Yeah. Okay. Older people's wisdom. All right. Very good. All right. Maybe we need to hear more of that. Absolutely. Anything else? All right. All right. Equal, kind of what we sang about. Yeah. Equal treatment for everyone. All right. All creation. In fact, all creation groans. Right. Paul said that all creation groans for the coming of the Lord. You know, we often think of people in that vein, but Paul said that really all of creation anticipates redemption. So, all right. Well, this morning I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people, don't care very much about, and that's the church. And so I'm going to suggest that our mission, should you decide to accept it, is to persuade those that don't care that it matters. Okay? So I want to talk about the church and specifically why the church matters. See, for some, the church is like it's an add-on. It's like an herbal supplement. It's like, well, I'm going to go to the CVS, I'm going to go to Walgreens, I'm just going to try and top off the tank a little bit. I'm feeling pretty good, but I'm going to go get a little fish oil, go get a little vitamin D, and so, it's seen as a supplement. Whereas for some, the Sunday gathering is as important to them as a well-balanced diet. So they're not going to go look for a supplement because this is the essence, for them. This is the main substance. And we know that for some it's a supplement because they just seem to pass through every once in a while. Well, maybe once a month. Or for some, maybe every other month. Oh, and then, of course, there's the proverbial twice a year folks. But for others, the Sunday gathering, and notice, as Gina brought up, I've really tried consciously to not call this like this morning, if you say, well, I'm going to church today, I'm trying to refer to this as the gathering, And so for others, this Sunday gathering, because the church is the building, as we just sang and as Gina just showed out so well, the Sunday gathering is something far more central and key to who they are. And so I'd like to throw a little wrinkle into your thinking, because if you want to understand the church, a critical litmus test of that understanding is not what happens today. It is what happens tomorrow. Because Monday, in the life of the gathering and in the life of the true church, the people, Monday is more significant, can we say, than Sunday. And why is that? Because Sunday, to use a metaphor that's hot right now, Sunday is the huddle. Something that ended sadly for some of us last week. Great game, wasn't it? I had to remind myself to breathe. I do that when I get all tense. Woo-wee, what a game. But Sunday is that. See, Sunday is the huddle, and then we go out to play, you might say. We go out to do what we've talked about in the huddle on Sunday. Sunday is when we come together and we talk about how to become the kind of people who will help people understand that the church, the gathering, can make the world a better place. It makes our individual lives better, and then we go out to make the world a better place. Sunday is when we invest in each other, and you get your life invested into, and hopefully as a result then you get the momentum to move out into Monday in a positive and a right direction. To use another phrase, Monday is where the rubber hits the road. Now, what happens on Monday is indeed the best evidence of whether what you experienced on Sunday actually makes a difference, actually matters. Because if Sunday has no impact on your Monday, one has to wonder about the Sunday experience, right? Some would say that if your life is no different Monday because of your Sunday, maybe you should have just, I don't know, in the summer gone golfing or gone to the beach, whatever. But if Sunday redirects how you live Monday, then Sunday can become the most significant and important decision that you make to begin your week. Now, all right, that understandably, that places a lot of pressure on myself, on the worship leaders, right? Places pressure on Gina. In a sense, it places pressure on all of the worship team, the guys spinning the dials back there, the ones you don't see. But I also feel that it lands on you as well. It lands on everyone. See, because I believe, and experience pretty well bears that out, that if we come anticipating, if we come expecting, as the old Laura Robertson song says, something good is going to happen to you or to me, happen to me this very day. See, if we come expecting something to happen, something meaningful, it's more likely to take place. I've said it before, like if you go out today looking for red pickup trucks like our Honorable Craig drives, you will see more red pickup trucks. Why? Because you're looking for them. You're anticipating them. So today, we're going to talk about the church. Because Jesus also talked about how we come to Him, how we come together. Remember, Jesus talked about good soil versus hard, rocky soil. So, do you come here in anticipation with the sense, I'm good soil, I'm ready, my ground isn't all hard. I just watered the big plant in my office today, and I put my finger on it to see if it was needed water. Well, it was just hard, so it took a long time for that water to seep in. So good soil. Do you come, in a sense, in good soil? Today, Jesus might have used one of the common phrases, that your attitude is going to affect your altitude. So I mentioned before that I really didn't grow up in church, and for the majority of my elementary and junior high years, church was we were looking for an herbal supplement. We were the one that went to the CVS and to the Jewel. Church was outside of our mainstream experience. There was certainly no animosity in it. It's really kind of had that sense we didn't care one way or another. I remember, that was the day in the white glove ushers. I remember that when we showed up, our family was recognized. We didn't have a reserved pew like some people did, but they found place for us there in the Belvedere United Methodist Church. When all of a sudden, at the fall of my junior year in high school, my dad said, we're going to start going to church regularly. Well, all of a sudden, I started to not feel so well Sunday mornings. Like, I don't know what happened, It was like, my stomach feels a little funny. My dad didn't share that funny feeling, and I became aware that I was going to go to church. And oddly enough, we'll never know, I never will know what happened within my dad to make that decision. Again, some of you know that 2 months after that, he just dropped dead of a heart attack. But there was something in him that said, let's go, we're going to go. And a part of that was my dad saying, you've got to go to youth group. And he said, you got to go for a month. And if you don't want to go after a month, you don't have to. But in that month, I came to a new understanding of this group of people called the church, and it changed my life. This enterprise, this organization, this grouping of people, of which there were zero of when Jesus walked this planet, I now had become a part of. Not because I'd become confirmed. See, that took place 3.5 years earlier when I had graduated from what us old people refer to as junior high. But I became a part of that group because I had encountered the church and I had met Jesus. Again, no church in Jesus' day. And Jesus starts talking about something that had to make no sense to them. More than once, Jesus said a lot of things that didn't make any sense to them. Things like, blessed are the poor. Like, easy for you to say, Jesus. Or blessed are the merciful, blessed are the meek. I mean, those things had to be like, whoa. He said things that didn't make any sense. And I would dare say this is one of those times. But if I were to say to you, what do you think about Xander Falax? You'd say, what? I said, well, what do you know about Xander Falax? And it's a word you've never heard of, I'm sure. And so you might go to Wikipedia and look it up and say, well, there is no such word. Maybe you meant this, or maybe you meant that. See, Google Translate would say, sorry, I don't know that word. And you'd be correct because I just made that word up. But that had to be somewhat what the disciples were thinking when all of a sudden Jesus starts talking about something they'd never even heard of before, this ecclesia, this church. To the same degree that if I say, no, you're gonna really enjoy this, Xander Falax. It's going to be meaningful, and it's going to populate the world. You think, Pastor Kurt, you're losing it. Jesus, I'm not sure about that. That's exactly how the word church sounded to the followers of Jesus. It wasn't a word they'd ever heard before, much less a concept. And so in Matthew 16, as the good Honorable Craig read for us, we're going to look at it again. Jesus introduces us to this concept, right? Talks to them about something that actually is going to be born. There's going to be a birth of the church. So when Jesus comes to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he says to his disciples, who do you say that the Son of Man is? So I thought it would be fun this morning if we just took a couple minutes for you to turn to the person next to you and say, how would you answer that question? And now that you're all sweaty and worried about that, we're actually not going to do it. But I had you worried for a second there, didn't I? Well, that must have been a little bit of how the disciples felt. Like, I remember going to the Board of Ordained Ministry like umpteen years ago. And you, man, I tell you what, it's sick to my stomach just about. And it's not an unusual feeling because what you say is to be evaluated by your hopeful peers of one day. And so when Jesus says, who do they say that the Son of Man is? I'm sure there was some apprehension, but then they started spitting out some things. Well, some say John the Baptist, and since John the Baptist has just been killed, I've always kind of understood this to be, in whose likeness would the Son of Man be? They weren't really thinking about reincarnation because if they had, John the Baptist really couldn't have worked out very well because they'd been living at the same time. So some say John the Baptist, Son of Man. Others say Elijah. Others still say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. Again, as Gina mentioned, this was laudatory. Wow, But who do you say that I am? And Simon, remember, some of us know, he was always the one who would speak up and always got it wrong. But he spoke up here, and he said, "You're the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father who's in heaven." In other words, congratulations, Simon, you finally got something right. And I say to you, Peter, you are the rock, and I'm going to build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And that's powerful, folks. Just, think about the power that the church was given. And that's going to be 2 weeks from today. The church is granted power. So the context, the conversation leading up was pretty fascinating. See, they've been traveling with Jesus. They've been watching Jesus teach, observing him perform his miracles, and they were just being stretched, right? This rabbi, this priest, this cleric, this holy man was embracing the outcasts. That's unheard of. Literally, there were rules prohibiting what Jesus had done over and over and again. He was not even supposed to touch certain people. He wasn't even supposed to talk to certain people. No, not only did the walls of Jericho come tumbling down, the rules, as far as Jesus was concerned, were tumbling down as well. So there was a lot going on, though, as he did these healings and miracles and teachings. I think, maybe he is the Messiah. But Jesus, who was always quick with the question, said, well, you've had a chance to be with me now for 3 years. And you talk amongst the people. What's the word on the street out there? And they responded. Again, John the Baptist. Again, a compliment. A prophet, Elijah, compliment. Jeremiah. Now, every one of these were so, complimentary. They were really, lifting up. And, there for a while I was with a bike group in Wheaton, and, we'd go out 50, 60, miles, every Saturday. And I was watching the Tour de France one time, and, all Betsy knew, loving wife, all she knew was I was out, doing this bike, keeping up, doing this bike group. And on the Tour de France, she looked at me and said, you could do that. I was like, exceedingly complimentary? No way. So they're being exceedingly complimentary to Jesus, but in fact, Jesus was greater than all of those that had been mentioned. And this is a question that you and I are still asked to answer. Who do you say that I am? And it's really the basic question that we need to ponder. Not what who your parents say. Now that could have formed and informed your thinking, but it's not who your spouse says or your Sunday school teacher or your neighbor or your pastor, but who do you say Jesus is? Peter responds, you're the Messiah. He's actually saying to Jesus that you're the fulfillment of every promise that God has given us. You're the Messiah, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God, the one who's come to set us free. And he says, Simon, you got it right. So happy for you. And you are the rock, and on this rock I'm going to build my church, and the gates of hell shall not overcome it. and not overcome you. And then he has this incredible imagery that the power will be entrusted to this gathering, this church. He said, I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Now remember, none of this making any sense to them at the time. It's a church. It's going to do what? And we don't know what a church is, and all of a sudden it's going to be doing all these things. They weren't waiting for Jesus to come and build a church. They were waiting for the Messiah to come to lead them out of Roman oppression. It was pretty simple. I mean, don't talk to us about something that we don't understand. We want the Messiah to come and to free us from what we do understand, and then we got the Roman boot right here on the old throat. As far as they were concerned, Jesus wasn't there to start a new thing. He was there to complete the old thing. You're the Messiah. You're the culmination. You're the fulfillment of our hopes and dreams. But Jesus was like, no, you got to look forward. They're wanting to look back. Jesus, this is what we're wanting. He's like, no, you got to look forward. And Peter, going forward, you're going to be the rock. And on you, I'm going to build my church. Again, they're like, what is this thing, church? And as Gina said, it comes from the word ecclesia. And it has this wonderful dual understanding. So ecclesia, so it means the called out ones. And so for some, they look at that and say, okay, the church is the called out one, meaning we're supposed to separate ourselves from the church, right? We are called out. We're to be separated. And so think monk, right? That's the ultimate way of separating yourself from the church. See, we're not supposed to be a part of the mass humanity. Think prohibition, right? We are separating ourselves. We are not drinking. We're not dancing. We're not going to movies. Funny, they never talked about not gossiping or some of those other things, They seem to be pretty proficient at that. So we're not to be like others. In that sense, they said we're the called out ones. We're the separated ones. But others look at that and go, no. Well, yes, we are the called out ones, but we are called out into the world. We're supposed to go out and reveal the difference being a part of the ecclesia makes in life. So we can learn a lot about a church by the way they interpret, by the way we interpret that word ecclesia, that word church. All that aside, on that day, Jesus was telling them that he had this idea called a church. And by the time the church is at Corinth, some of us know, the church, it's not living in the Gilded Age. It can be messy. And the church at Corinth was messy, and the church at Corinth was just the tip of the iceberg. But messy never means, or is never to be an excuse for avoiding it. So I think it's so important to understand why the church matters. It matters because it's through the church that God brings us together. Now, again, some of us are aware that lately there's been a huge movement towards, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And when people use that expression and live that out, it likely means that their spirituality is lived in isolation. It's an individualistic experience. Now, I understand there could be a lot of reasons for that. Maybe they had a bad experience in the church. Been there, done that, don't want anything more to do with it. I know people like that. Or they know someone who had been there, done that, and they talked about it and they said, well, I don't want to even go near that place. Or as when Bill Hybels started his church at Willow Creek, or was in the process of it, he went around door to door, hundreds of doors, and said, if they answer the door and said they go to church, he said, I don't want to talk to you. I only want to go talk to people who don't go to church. And what did he find out? That among the 5 or 6 reasons, he said that he found that people find the church to be irrelevant. So if something's irrelevant, I mean, pretty soon you just stop participating, right? You stop going. See, I'm spiritual because religion is bad, but spirituality is meaningful for me. For those who have followed that path as a way to avoid human connections, the only way back for them is Monday Christians. The church has some heavy-duty baggage. On occasion, I've said the greatest enemy to the movement of Jesus was and perhaps is the church. I know someone who says regularly, I like Jesus, but I don't like his fan club. See, given all its flaws, though, the church still matters because it is how God brings us together, whether it's 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, or 30, or 300, or 3,000. And that's really important because God doesn't need the church to connect us to God's self. See, by the way, you don't need this church or any church to connect to God. We need Jesus, right? To connect us to God. And so when someone says to me, yeah, I don't need the church to connect me with God, you know what I say? You got me. You just need Jesus to connect to God. I'm not here to confuse that point, but the problem is this: while Jesus was still walking in the earth talking to his disciples, he said, I'm going to build a church. And if you don't need the church, then why did Jesus build one? Well, except that his goal, his reason for coming wasn't to connect us to himself, but to connect us to each other. Right? And can we be honest for a moment that sometimes it's easier to connect with God than it is to connect with people? The psalmist writes, the heavens declare his glory. Bam, yes, hit the easy button. But all too often down through the ages, the hard part of seeing God has been separating out the destructive behaviors of people who say they are God followers, right? And easily come to mind, oh man, the Crusades. I mean, whoever would have wanted to turn to the church during the Crusades? But I'm really talking about the here and now at the local level. Life together can be and often is hard. Within a local community, within a fellowship of believers, there can be misunderstandings, misaligned goals, different priorities. Financial pressures will do a church in. Loving God, that's easy. What's not to love? God is love. What's really hard is to convince us to love each other. God, easy. People, all too often, messy. You ever meet someone, you go, oh, wow, he's awesome. You know why he's awesome? Because you don't know everything about him. Or you look at her and you go, whoo-wee, she's perfect. Well, let me tell you, don't marry her while you still think she's perfect. See, when you love someone in their imperfection, that's the miracle, right? That's the gift. See, love becomes excellent when you finally see them fully as they are, and you still love them. That's the miracle. That's the church. So when people say, I don't go to church because there's too many hypocrites in the church, I say, you're right. We don't always live up to what we want to be and how we want to live, but we are hypocrites in transition. Or I don't go to church because people let me down. Well, of course they do. They're people. It's not because they go to church they let you down. It's just because we're human. That's what happens to humans. We're human here. We sometimes let people down. See, if you go to Toast and Roast and you say, well, I'm not going back there because everyone there's a hypocrite. Well, no, you wouldn't. And nor would you give up coffee. Or if you go to a yoga class and you look and, man, everyone's doing all those wonderful moves and, they're doing, but afterward you see a couple of them and, and they're of all things, they're vaping over there, You say, well, you wouldn't say, well, I'm never going back to yoga again. Because everywhere people look perfect, it's an illusion. But the church is to be the one place where we can let our hair down, let it be known. You know, right now I'm a mess. But unfortunately, the church over the years has done just the opposite, isn't it? You know, the church has been the place where we have to come in and we have to smile, even if we fought tooth and nail with our family all the way here. If we had a blowout, drag out, you know, whatever. If we just had a terrible week, we have to walk into church and, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. Did you have a good week? Oh, yes, I had a very nice week. Thank you very much. But the church is really to be a place where we let our hair down and say, no, I had a bad week. It was a crushing week, you know, for me. Just found out, and then you fill in the blank. Yesterday I was a mess. Today I'm a mess. Tomorrow I'm hoping to not be, but I might be. Calling me hypocritical, that's an upgrade. Because I'm just a hypocrite in transition. But I'm just working through all the brokenness of who I am, and I've learned I can't do it alone. That's the church. Jesus established the church so that we wouldn't do life alone. It's in the church that God calls us together, because life can really suck. Life can really be bad, painful, full of disappointment. The people you love, gone, blink of an eye. What you thought would always be, gone, lost in an instant. You try to do that alone, it can crush you. Jesus established the church, not for himself, but for us, so that we could do life together. All right, so that's what we're doing today, the history of the foundation of the church. So if you would indulge me at some point, if you can, you know, it doesn't have to be now, or maybe you've already done it. How has the church formed you? How has this grouping of people, you know, some of us have been part of 2 churches maybe in our life. Some of us have maybe been a part of 15 churches in our life. What has that experience meant, you know, to you? That's what that card's there for. And I hope that you will honor me and help me do next week by filling that out. Lord, we all have different experiences of this gathering. I know that for many it has brought incredible blessing, incredible help, strength. But it's also been for many a source of deep pain and frustration. Our connection is with you, and you call us to connect with others, and so we do, and ask that as we connect with one another, that we will be your people, that we will be able to let your light shine through us even when our light is but a mere speck. So, Lord, I thank you for this gathering here, for those who are watching remotely and those who are watching later on in the week, that you call us to connect. You call us to be with one another in ways that are meaningful, ways that are helpful. So bless us, oh Lord, in that journey as we make this journey together as your people, the church. Amen.